Nobody expected this. Not the fans, not the fighters, not even him. Because when Blueface stepped into that ring after 3 years away, everyone thought this would be a comeback story, a smooth return, a dominant performance. A reminder that he wasn't just a rapper, he was a problem inside that ring. But what actually happened was something nobody saw coming. Because within minutes, that entire narrative collapsed. And it all started with one moment, one exchange, one viral clip that spread across the internet like wildfire. A hit, a stumble, and then he was sent flying out of the ring. Now here's where things get crazy. Because Blueface says it was just a push. But the internet? They're not buying it. Not even close. Clips started flooding social media. Fans slowed it down, replayed it, zoomed in, and then came to one brutal conclusion. He didn't get pushed, he got rocked. And from that exact moment, everything changed. The fight shifted, the energy flipped, and suddenly, the rapper who walked in as the favorite looked like he was fighting just to survive. But the real chaos didn't happen in the ring. It happened after. Because just seconds after the loss, standing right there, in front of the crowd, in front of the cameras, in front of the man who hosted the entire event, Blueface said something that nobody expected. And trust me, this one statement didn't just shock the audience, it ignited a full-blown controversy that pulled in rappers, boxers, streamers, and millions of fans overnight. Because now the question isn't just, how did he lose? It's, was this fight even fair? And once that question hit the internet, everything started falling apart. And what happened next might be even more shocking than the loss itself. To really understand why this moment hit so hard, why the internet reacted the way it did, and why this loss turned into something way bigger than just a fight. You have to look at everything that led up to it. Because this wasn't just a random match, this was supposed to be a statement. When Blueface announced he was stepping back into the ring, the expectations were already sky high. And for good reason. This wasn't a rookie. This wasn't someone stepping in for clout. This was someone who had already proven himself before. People remembered his previous fight. The knockout, the confidence, the way he carried himself like he belonged there. And even more importantly, they remembered who he had trained with. Names like Floyd Mayweather were being thrown around. Elite-level boxing conversations, high-level sparring. So when he returned after 3 years, the narrative was already written. This was supposed to be a warm-up fight, a tune-up, a quick performance to shake off the rust before something much bigger. Because behind the scenes, there was already a major fight lined up, a highly promoted matchup, tickets already being sold, marketing already rolling. This fight, it wasn't the main goal, it was just the setup. But here's where things started getting complicated, because the fight we were supposed to see never happened. Originally, Blueface was set to face another rapper, a more balanced matchup, something that made sense on paper, but according to reports, that fight got canceled at the last minute. Why? Because his sparring wasn't going well. Let that sink in. A fight canceled. Because things behind the scenes weren't looking right. And just like that, everything shifted. Instead of facing someone expected, he was matched up against a completely different opponent. A streamer. Someone making their boxing debut. On paper, that sounds like an easier fight. Right? But reality, it turned out to be the exact opposite. Because while the opponent may have been new to the ring, they came in with something Blueface wasn't ready for, pressure. But before we even get to the fight itself, there's something else you need to understand. Something that played a huge role in how this all unfolded. The weight. Because the Blueface that stepped into that ring wasn't the same Blueface people remembered. Before, he was a middleweight, lean, fast, around 157 pounds. Now, he came back as a heavyweight, a massive jump. one that professional fighters take years to adjust to. And this wasn't just a small difference. This was a complete transformation. Reports say the weight gain came during his time away, including time spent dealing with legal issues and being off the scene. And while putting on weight can give you power, it can also take away something even more important: speed, conditioning, control. So now you have a situation where, yes, he has the experience. Yes, he has the training. Yes, he has the confidence. But physically, he's not the same fighter. And that combination, it's dangerous because it creates a false sense of security. And going into the fight, that's exactly what people had. Confidence. Fans believed this would be easy. Analysts believed this would be routine. Even Blueface himself? He walked in like this was just another step towards something bigger. And to be fair, at first, it looked like they were right. Round 1? Everything went according to plan. He used his reach, controlled the distance, landed cleaner shots, looked more technical, more polished, more experienced. Exactly what everyone expected. But then, round 2 happened. And that's where everything started to fall apart, because this is the moment that changed everything. The moment that shifted the entire fight. The moment that turned a routine win into a viral disaster. His opponent pushed forward, closed the distance, started targeting the body, and then that moment, the one everyone is still talking about, the exchange that sent him into the ropes and out of the ring. And now, officially, it wasn't counted as a knockdown, but unofficially, the internet made its own decision, and from that point on, the fight was never the same, because confidence turned into hesitation, control turned into survival, and suddenly, the script flipped. The opponent took over, applied pressure, forced mistakes, pushed him into corners, and by the final round, it wasn't about winning anymore. It was about making it to the end. Now here's where things get even more intense. Because despite everything, despite the pressure, despite the damage, he didn't go down. He stayed on his feet, took the hits, finished the fight. But when the judges' scorecards were announced, that's when everything truly exploded. A unanimous decision, clear, final, no debate. At least officially. And that's when the real story began. Yeah, because losing the fight? That was just the beginning. What happened next? Turn this from a boxing story into a full-blown controversy. Because instead of accepting the loss quietly, instead of walking away, Blueface did something that shocked everyone. Right there in the ring, right in front of the host, right in front of the audience. He made an accusation, and not just any accusation, one that could change how people see the entire event. Because now, it wasn't just about losing, it was about whether the fight was even fair in the first place. And trust me, once that idea hit the internet, everything went completely out of control. The moment the decision was announced, everything should have ended. The fight was over. The winner was declared. The crowd had its reaction. And normally, that's where the story fades out. But this time, that's exactly where the real story began. Because instead of walking away quietly, instead of giving the usual "I'll be back" speech, Blueface did something nobody expected. He stayed. Right there in the ring. Right in front of the cameras. Right next to the man who organized the entire event. Adin Ross. And what he said next didn't just shock the audience, it shifted the entire narrative of the night. At first, it seemed like a normal post-fight exchange. Adin Ross stepped in, asking the standard question, "Are we going to see you back here again?" Simple. Routine. Something to wrap things up. But Blueface? He wasn't in the mood for routine. Because instead of answering calmly, he dropped a line that instantly changed everything. "You know damn well you ain't gonna lose your own money on your own fight card." Silence. Not confusion, not laughter. Silence. Because everyone understood exactly what he was implying. And just like that, This wasn't just about a loss anymore. This became an accusation, a serious one, because what he was suggesting was that the fight, the results, the entire event might not have been as fair as it looked. And he didn't stop there. He doubled down, right in the ring, saying he didn't agree with the unanimous decision, that the scoring didn't make sense, that something about the outcome felt off. And then he went even further. Yeah, because later, on his own stream, he made it crystal clear, "I'll never fight on that platform again." That wasn't frustration, that wasn't emotion, that was a statement. And now, the situation had officially escalated, because accusing a promoter, especially publicly, of manipulating outcomes, that's not small, that's explosive. And within minutes, the internet caught on. Clips of the exchange started circulating. Fans replayed it, analyzed every word, every tone, every facial expression, and suddenly, the focus shifted from the fight to the allegation. But here's where things take an even bigger turn, because Adin Ross, he didn't stay quiet. He responded immediately, right there, in real time, denying everything, saying he had no idea what Blueface was talking about, insisting that nothing was manipulated, nothing was tampered with, nothing was controlled. Two completely different stories, two completely different perspectives. And now, the audience had to choose who they believed, but the situation didn't stop there, because the more people looked into the event, the more questions started coming up. And this is where the first twist hits, because it wasn't just Blueface's fight. That had people talking. There were other fights on the same card, other decisions, other moments, that fans started calling questionable. Close fights, controversial scorecards, unexpected outcomes, and suddenly, Blueface's accusation didn't feel isolated anymore. It felt like part of a pattern. Even Adin Ross himself later admitted that some of the judging on the card was suspect. Let that sink in. Gave the promoter, acknowledging that decisions during the event were questionable. Now, does that prove anything? No. But does it make people think twice? Absolutely, because now the narrative shifts again. Was Blueface just upset about losing, or was he reacting to something that others were also starting to notice? And that's what made this situation so complicated. Because inside the ring, the footage tells one story. His opponent pushed forward, applied pressure, controlled the later rounds. But outside the ring, the conversation was becoming something completely different. Debates started flooding social media. Did he actually lose? Was the scoring fair? Did the judges get it wrong? And then came the moment that pushed everything even further, because someone brought up the purpose of the fight. And this wasn't supposed to be a high-stakes matchup. This was supposed to be a tune-up fight, a warm-up, a confidence builder, and instead, it turned into a loss. Which raised an even bigger question. If this was the easy fight, then what happens next? Because looming over everything was a much bigger event, a much bigger opponent, a much bigger stage, a fight that had already been announced, promoted, tickets already selling. And now, everything about that fight was in question. Because if Blueface couldn't win here, against a debut opponent, then what happens when he steps into a ring with someone bigger? More experienced? More prepared? Suddenly, that upcoming fight didn't look like an opportunity anymore. It looked like a risk, and that's when the pressure started building. Not just from fans, not just from critics, but from the industry itself. Because now Blueface was in a position where every move mattered. Does he accept the loss and move forward? Does he double down on the accusations? Does he pull out of the next fight? Every option comes with consequences. And here's the most dangerous part of all this. Because while the internet was debating, while fans were arguing, while clips were going viral, the situation between him and Adin Ross was getting worse. Because once accusations like that are made publicly, you can't take them back. You can only escalate. And that's exactly what was happening. Because behind the scenes, things were getting tense. And according to some reports, that relationship was already broken beyond repair. No more collaboration, no more events, no more working together, just silence and tension. And if you think that's where it ends, it's not. Because the fallout from this moment didn't just affect the fight, it affected everything connected to it. His reputation, his upcoming match, his standing in the influencer boxing world, and most importantly, the way people saw him moving forward. Because now, he wasn't just the guy who lost, he was the guy who made a serious accusation in front of the world. And whether that accusation is true or not, it changed everything. But what happened next took things to a whole new level. Because once the internet fully got involved, there was no controlling what came next. And trust me, the reactions, they were brutal. The moment those clips hit the internet, it was over. Not just the fight, not just the night, but any chance of controlling the narrative. Because within minutes, Blueface wasn't just trending, he was being dragged from every direction. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, every platform turned into a war zone. And the reactions? They weren't light, they weren't playful, they were brutal. Major names started chiming in. Rappers, streamers, industry figures, even people who had nothing to do with boxing, suddenly had something to say. And the tone? It was ruthless. Some mocked the loss. Some replayed the clip of him getting knocked through the ropes over and over again. Some turned it into memes within minutes. But others? They focused on something deeper. The accusation. Because now the internet had two things to debate. Did he lose fair and square? Or was something off? And just like that, the narrative split into two completely different stories. And on one side, you had people clowning him. Bro got knocked out the ring and still talking about rigged. He blaming the judges but got dominated after round 1. That wasn't no robbery, that was a reality check. On the other side, you had people questioning everything. Why were multiple fights on that card controversial? Even the promoter said judging was suspect. He might actually have a point. And that divide? It only made things louder. But then came the moment that pushed everything even further. Because this wasn't just fans anymore, this was experts. Real fighters. People who understood boxing at a high level. And one name in particular caught everyone's attention. Claressa Shields. When she spoke, people listened. Because she didn't just react emotionally, she broke it down. And what she said? It didn't help Blueface. She pointed out something that hit hard. Public figures need at least 6 months in the gym before stepping into real fights. Translation? He wasn't ready. And just like that, the narrative shifted again. Because now, this wasn't about rigging. This was about preparation, about discipline, about the difference between being a celebrity and being a fighter. But here's where things get interesting. Because even while criticizing, she also said something that confused people. She admitted the fight was close, that she personally thought the opponent still won. But it wasn't one-sided, and suddenly, the debate got even more complicated. Because now the question became, was it a clear loss, or just not the robbery Blueface claimed? And that gray area? It kept the argument alive. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, things were getting worse. Because the situation wasn't just affecting his image, it was affecting his future. Remember that upcoming fight, the big one? The one already being promoted? Yeah, now that was in danger. Because now fans were asking, should this fight even happen? And the answer wasn't clear. Because if he moves forward and loses again, it's over. His boxing credibility? Gone. But if he pulls out, it looks like he's running. And in this industry, that's just as bad. And that's when another layer of drama hit. Because his own team got pulled into the chaos. His manager, the people around him, the ones who were supposed to control the situation, they were now part of the story. Clips surfaced of tension outside the event, arguments with security, frustration building even before the fight started. And suddenly, people started asking a new question. Was everything already off before he even stepped into the ring? Because if the environment was chaotic, if things were already going wrong behind the scenes, then maybe, just maybe, that energy carried into the fight. But the biggest twist came from somewhere nobody expected. Because another rapper, someone with history, decided to step in. NLE Choppa, and this wasn't random. These two already had tension. A past, a history that never fully cooled down. And now, with Blueface coming off a loss, the timing couldn't have been worse because Choppa didn't just comment. He challenged him publicly, called him out, told him to step into a fight, and just like that, the pressure doubled. Because now, it wasn't just about recovering from a loss. It was about defending his reputation against someone who had been waiting for this moment. And here's the part that really changes everything. Because of this loss, it doesn't exist on its own. It's connected to everything else going on in his life. The rivalries, the drama, the personal situations, the controversies, all of it. Now tied to this one moment, this one fight, this one night, that the entire internet watched in real time. And in today's world, that's all it takes. One moment, one clip, one narrative to change everything. Because now, no matter what he does next, this moment follows him. The clip, the loss, the accusation. It's all part of his story now. And the craziest part? We still don't know how this ends. Yeah, because if the reactions so far have been this intense, then what comes next might be even worse. Because the internet doesn't forget, and right now, it's watching his every move. By now, this wasn't just a fight anymore. This wasn't even just about Blueface losing. This had turned into a full-blown internet storm, the kind that pulls in everyone. Fans, critics, rappers, boxers, even people who had never watched a single fight before. Because once those clips went viral, there was no escaping it. The moment he got sent through the ropes, that became the image. The meme, the replay, the thing people couldn't stop watching. And the comments? They were ruthless. Well, some fans didn't hold back at all. He trained with legends just to get tossed out the ring by a debut fighter? This wasn't a loss, this was a wake-up call. You can't call it rigged when you were getting pressured all fight. But then, there was the other side. Because not everyone was laughing. Some people were actually questioning things. Looking deeper, breaking it down. Why were multiple fights controversial that night? Why did even the host say judging looked off? Why did the scorecards feel so one-sided? And just like that, the internet split again. Because now it wasn't just about skill, it was about trust. Trust in the judges, trust in the promotion, trust in what people were actually watching. And once that kind of doubt enters the conversation, it spreads fast. But the reactions didn't stop with fans. Because inside the industry, people started speaking, not directly at first, not calling names, but dropping hints. Subtle posts, cryptic messages, lines that didn't say everything, but said enough. One artist posted, "Some people step in the ring for clout, others step in ready." Another wrote, "You can't skip the process and expect the same results." And just like that, the tone shifted again, because now, this wasn't just entertainment, this was a lesson, a warning, about what happens when preparation doesn't match expectation. But here's where things got uncomfortable, because the conversation started moving away from just the fight and towards something more personal. People began bringing up his past, his time away, his lifestyle, his choices, and suddenly, the loss wasn't just a loss. It was being framed as a reflection of everything. 3 years out the ring, came back heavier, didn't look conditioned. All of it being analyzed, all of it being judged, and in today's world, that kind of attention, it doesn't fade quickly. Meanwhile, inside the boxing community, the reactions were more focused, more technical, but just as serious. Fighters pointed out the weight difference, the conditioning, the pacing. They broke down the rounds, explained how momentum shifted, talked about how pressure changed the fight, and the conclusion wasn't emotional, it was simple. He got outworked. Not necessarily outclassed completely, but outworked. Outpressured, outlasted, and hearing that from people who actually understand the sport, that hit differently. But even with all that, the controversy didn't disappear, because the accusation still hung in the air. Rigged, tampered, unfair, and until that gets addressed properly, it doesn't go away, it lingers. And that's exactly what's happening. Because now, every time someone talks about the fight, they're not just talking about the performance. They're talking about the possibility that something else was going on. And that possibility, it keeps the story alive. But here's the most interesting part of all this. Because while the internet is loud, while fans are debating, while critics are analyzing, the people at the center of it, they've gone quiet. No major statements, no follow-ups, no clarification, just silence. And that kind of silence, it doesn't calm things down. It makes them worse, because when there's no answer, people create their own. Rumors grow, stories change, narratives evolve. And suddenly, the truth becomes harder and harder to find, which leads to the biggest question of all. Why stay silent? Is it strategy? Is it legal? Is it because there's more going on behind the scenes? Or is it because the situation is still unfolding? Because one thing is clear, this isn't over. Not even close. And if the reactions so far have been this intense, then whatever comes next might take things to a whole new level. Because right now, the entire world is watching, waiting for the next move. Just when it felt like the story had reached its peak, just when it seemed like everything had already been exposed, that's when the narrative took a turn nobody expected. Because while the internet was busy arguing, clowning, debating whether the fight was fair or not, a new detail quietly started circulating. At first, nobody paid attention. It wasn't loud, it wasn't viral. It was just a small piece of information, buried under all the chaos. But once people noticed it, everything changed. Because according to multiple whispers, there was something off before the fight even started. Not in the ring, not during the rounds, but behind the scenes. And if this claim is true, then what happened that night might not have been as simple as it looked. Let's go back for a second. Remember how the original fight got canceled? How the opponent was switched last minute? How everything suddenly felt rushed? That alone raised questions, but now people are connecting dots. Because some are claiming that the replacement opponent, the streamer making his debut, wasn't as unprepared as everyone thought. That he had been training longer than expected, preparing quietly, studying, getting ready for a moment exactly like this. And if that's true, then this wasn't just a last-minute matchup. It was a trap disguised as an opportunity. Now again, there's no official proof, no confirmed reports. But the timing, it's suspicious. Because how do you go from a canceled fight to a completely different opponent? Who somehow ends up dominating the later rounds? That's the question people can't stop asking. And then came the second twist, because insiders started pointing to something even more unsettling. The judging, not just in this fight, but across the entire event. Multiple close decisions, controversial scorecards. Even comments from the promoter himself suggesting things looked off. And suddenly, that one accusation, the one everyone brushed off at first, started sounding a little different. Because what if, there really was something going on behind the scenes? Again, no proof. but enough smoke to make people wonder if there's fire. And here's where things get even more intense. Because while all of this is happening, while the internet is breaking everything down, while theories are spreading, there's one thing nobody can ignore: the silence. Because Blueface hasn't fully clarified anything. No detailed explanation. No breakdown of what he meant. Just that one moment, that one accusation, and then nothing. Same thing on the other side. No official statement clearing everything up. No deep response addressing the claims. Just denials. Short, simple, controlled. And when both sides stay quiet like that, it usually means one of two things. Either everything has already been said, or there's something they're not ready to say yet. And that second option, that's what's making people uneasy. Because if there really are details we haven't seen, if there really are conversations happening behind closed doors, if there really is more to this story, then what we've seen so far might only be the surface. And now, there's one final question hanging over everything: the upcoming fight. The big one. The one that was supposed to define the next chapter. Is it still happening? Because if it does, all eyes are going to be on it. Not just to see if he wins, but to see how he responds. Does he come back stronger? More focused? More prepared? Or does this loss follow him into the next fight? Because in boxing, momentum is everything. And right now, that momentum is gone. And if he loses again, that's not just another loss. That's a narrative, a label, something that sticks. But if he wins, then everything changes again. Because suddenly, this moment becomes a setback, not an ending. And that's why this situation is so intense. Because it's not finished, it's still unfolding. Every decision from here matters. Every move gets watched. Every word gets analyzed. And the craziest part? We still don't know the full story. Because if even half of these rumors are true, then what really happened that night might be something completely different than what we saw on camera. And if that's the case, then the biggest reveal might still be coming. So now the question is, Annette, what happens next? Does the truth finally come out? Or is this one of those stories that keeps getting deeper the more you dig? Because one thing is certain. This isn't over, and whatever happens next might be even bigger than the fight itself. Now it's your turn. Because after everything we just broke down, the fight, the viral moment, the accusations, the reactions, there's one thing nobody can agree on. What really happened that night? Do you think Blueface just took a clean loss and couldn't handle it? Or do you believe there's actually something deeper going on behind the scenes? Something we're only just starting to see? Be honest. Because this isn't just about boxing anymore. This is about reputation, credibility. And what happens when everything unfolds in front of millions of people in real time? And what about that moment everyone keeps replaying? The clip. The one where he goes through the ropes. Do you think it was a push? Or was that the exact second the fight turned against him? And let's not ignore the bigger question. If the judging really was suspect across multiple fights that night, then does that change how you see the result? Or does the performance in the ring still tell the full story? I want you to go down in the comments right now and say it clearly. Was Blueface robbed? Or did he lose fair and square? Should he take the rematch? Or walk away completely? And do you think that next fight actually happens? Or is it already in danger? Don't sit on the fence. Pick a side. Because this debate, it's only getting bigger. If you made it this far, you already know. This isn't just another viral moment. This is one of those situations that keeps evolving. And trust me, if anything new drops, any real proof, any unexpected twist, we're going to break it down immediately. So make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because the next update might change everything you think you know about this story.